Chapter 29. Unanswered Questions. Brian was taken to a cell because he mentioned that he might have harmed his wife. Now, all alone, his thoughts were filled with worry about the children. He didn't know if they had been rescued or if they were even still alive. The uncertainty was tormenting him. As he sat on the thin mattress in his cell, he also began to ponder the consequences if the children were not alive. He had found them on the laptop, but he had also been watching them through the cameras. Why? He thought to himself. If those are my children, why aren't they with me at home? Why were they in another place, and why was I observing them with cameras? His mind raced with guilt and confusion. Why did I talk about my wife? Now I can't get any information. He felt trapped by his own words, now realizing that he might have jeopardized any chance of understanding the situation fully. In the quiet of the cell, Brian's mind continued to spin. He recalled the hidden room, the mysterious laptop, and the unsettling footage of the children. The questions multiplied. Why were the children there? Are they really mine? And if they are, why wasn't I with them? He regretted mentioning anything about his wife to the police. Cut off from the world, he was left in a state of deep isolation, filled with remorse. What if I've made everything worse? He worried. As the hours passed, Brian lay on the hard bed, feeling the weight of his situation. The snippets of memory returning to him seemed like fragments of a larger, unsolvable puzzle. What happened to our family? Why can't I remember it all? The night in the cell was long and arduous. Brian struggled to find a comfortable position on the bed, but physical discomfort was the least of his problems. His mind was a whirlwind of fear, guilt, and confusion. Every attempt to piece together his fragmented memories led to more questions than answers. Why was I monitoring my own family through cameras? Was I protecting them, or was I the reason they needed protection? The thought chilled him to the bone. With each passing moment, Brian felt more disconnected from the life he once knew, or thought he knew. As dawn approached, Brian hadn't slept a wink. He sat up, his back against the cold wall, facing the reality of his situation, the mystery of his past, the identity of the children, and the fate of his wife. All these critical pieces of his life remained shrouded in mystery. Despite the fear and uncertainty, he knew he had to uncover the truth about his past and the whereabouts of the children. The road ahead seemed daunting, but Brian was resolved to find answers and, hopefully, redemption. Chapter 30. A Tangled Web. Brian was taken to a room. He was told there was some news. After waiting for what seemed like an eternity in the small, cold room, Brian was finally met with Detective John Taylor's arrival. The detective entered with a serious look on his face, carrying several folders filled with papers. Brian's heart raced, anticipating the news about the mysterious children and the odd situation he found himself entangled in. Detective Taylor wasted no time. The children have been located and are currently receiving medical care at the hospital, he began, his voice steady but gentle. They were quite malnourished, having not eaten properly for some time, but the doctors are optimistic about their recovery. A sense of relief washed over Brian, yet a cloud of confusion still hung heavy. The detective then delivered another piece of startling information. After conducting a DNA test due to the unusual circumstances, we discovered something quite surprising. You, Brian, are not the biological father of the children. Brian's world seemed to stop spinning. The revelation left him speechless, his mind struggling to comprehend what he had just heard. But there's more, Detective Taylor continued. Your fingerprints have been identified at the site of a fatal house fire. And to complicate matters further, these fingerprints were linked to a person named David Brown. Brian felt as if the ground had opened beneath him. How could his fingerprints be found at a crime scene, And who was David Brown? Brian's confusion turned into a flood of questions. But how? I don't understand any of this, he stammered, trying to grasp the reality of the situation. Who are these children, then? And what is my connection to David Brown? Detective Taylor paused, acknowledging the complexity of the case. We're still piecing everything together. It's a puzzling situation, but rest assured, we're determined to uncover the truth. Brian was overwhelmed. The relief of knowing the children were safe battled with his newfound confusion about not being their father and the mysterious link to a house fire and a man named David Brown. The detective's revelations had unraveled Brian's understanding of his own life, leaving him with more questions than answers. Who am I then? And what happened that led me here? Brian pondered, feeling more lost than ever. The news about the children, the DNA test, and the connection to a criminal investigation spun around in his head. Brian sits quietly in the interrogation room, surrounded by uncertainty and disbelief. The pieces of the puzzle were slowly coming together, but each new piece only added to the complexity of the mystery. Chapter 31. The Truth Revealed. In the quiet of his cell, Brian, now revealed to be David Brown, began to piece together the story of his past as the detective had explained. David had known Sarah Smith since high school, where they briefly dated. Their relationship ended after a heated argument, but David, struggling with a brain tumor, couldn't accept the breakup. In his mind, Sarah was still his partner, and this belief led him down a dark path. David kept his distance from Sarah in the physical world, yet he clung to her in his thoughts, living as if they were still together. His obsession grew, driving him to secretly stalk her. He would sneak into her house when she wasn't there, taking her diary and personal items, keeping these as tokens of their relationship. This pattern of behavior didn't stop as they moved on to university. David chose the same university as Sarah, ensuring he was always close, yet he remained invisible to her. She never noticed him, but he was always there, watching from a distance. When Sarah moved on with her life, marrying and moving to another city, David's obsession compelled him to follow. He found an apartment in her city, secured a job, and settled into a routine that revolved around watching Sarah and her family. Each day after work, he would take his binoculars and video camera to spy on her, recording moments of her life which he would later watch, imagining they were a happy family together. David was meticulous in his observations, focusing on times when Sarah was alone or with her children. His illusion of their life together was vivid and real in his mind. However, his carefully constructed world shattered when Sarah's family left for a spontaneous vacation without his knowledge. David's desperation peaked as he searched for her, not understanding her sudden disappearance. After a torturous week of longing, when Sarah and her family returned, David's obsession reached a new height. Unable to wait for a glimpse of her daily life, he found a secluded spot at night and watched the house through his binoculars, craving any connection to the life he believed they shared. David saw them together for the first time, Sarah and her husband in their bedroom, enjoying what looked like a romantic evening. The sight ignited a fierce anger in David. He felt betrayed and deceived. Overwhelmed by his emotions, he wasn't able to think straight. Consumed by his anger, he made his way to Sarah's house, driven by a sense of injustice. He knew the garden door didn't close properly because he had watched her in the garden. He pushed the gate open with ease and entered the house. With his heart pounding and rage blinding him, David marched straight to the bedroom. The door was locked, barricading him from confronting the scene that had shattered his world. Fueled by his fury, he kicked at the door relentlessly. 1, 2, 3. On his third attempt, the door gave way, crashing open. He burst into the room. Sarah and her husband, startled from their intimacy, stood up in shock. Without hesitation, David lunged at Sarah's husband, and a fierce struggle ensued. In the chaos, Sarah attempted to intervene, but was struck hard. She stumbled backward, her head hitting a cabinet sharply, rendering her unconscious. Amidst their struggle, candles were knocked over, setting the carpet ablaze. Panic set in as David realized the fire was spreading quickly. He attempted to extinguish the flames, but it was futile. The fire had taken hold. Glancing at Sarah and her husband, who lay motionless amidst the growing inferno, David's survival instincts kicked in. He rushed to find the children, discovering them huddled together in their room. Feigning calm, he told the children he was a firefighter there to rescue them. Escaping the house with the children in tow, they emerged to the sight of the engulfing flames. The children cried out, terrified by the fire. David hurried them into a car and drove away from the scene, the blazing fire reflecting in his rearview mirror. As he drove into the night, David realized that there was no turning back. He had to leave his old life behind, including his identity. He left the town with the children and changed his identity to Brian Miller. Sitting in the interrogation room, the weight of his actions began to sink in for Brian David. The detective's detailed account of his past actions illuminated the extent of his obsession with Sarah. The realization that his love had morphed into a dangerous fixation left him reeling. The clarity brought on by the detective's revelations forced David to confront the reality of his delusions and the impact of his stalking on Sarah's life. David is left to grapple with the enormity of his actions. The journey to uncovering his identity and the truth about his past had taken a dramatic turn, revealing a tangled web of love, obsession, and delusion. With these revelations laid bare, David knew he had to face the consequences of his actions. See you in the next story. Thanks for watching.